A very, very faint center of circulation there. It's not the best forecasting tool to track the eye, but sometimes you get lucky and you can see one there. But no doubt about it, western Cuba probably going to wind up with about 40 inches of rain. That's 40 inches of rain by the time this is done. Very similar to the rainfall totals, if not more, than what they had in Cancun and Cozumel and the northeastern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula. Notice how the greens aren't quite as solid over the remainder of South Florida just yet, but notice how close it is to Key West right there. Those very, very heavy rain bands are very close to moving in. The western edge of the hurricane eroding just a little bit. This is all dry air that's working in behind it. And by the way, once this hurricane goes on by, we'll be pulling in that dry air. It's also going to turn relatively chilly for South Florida once the hurricane goes by. Later on this week, we're going to be seeing lows in the 50s and highs possibly in the 70s, but that's after the hurricane goes by. All right, back to real time and what's going on right now on our statewide look at Weather Service Doppler radar. You can just about see the eastern edge of the eye down in here, and not quite circular yet. It's not quite into radar range just yet, but once it is, we'll be tracking the eye of Hurricane Wilma via radar, and we'll do more nowcasting than forecasting. I think everybody by now knows it's coming, and over the next 6 to 12 hours, it's pretty much we're going to be switching modes from where is it going to where is it now and what's happening now. We're not quite there yet because the track could still change, but it still looks very likely as if Wilma will make landfall somewhere across the southwestern coast of Florida, somewhere either between Key West and Fort Myers, maybe a little bit farther to the north. But for all intents and purposes, it's probably going to scoot right across Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County, near Lake Okeechobee, then on out to sea rapidly during the day tomorrow. You can already see those feeder bands wrapping in. Not much action on the east coast of Florida just yet. On the west coast of Florida, there's been some very ambitious rain bands moving through, and the mother load is about to move in about the next 3 or 4 hours across the lower Keys. The latest advisory on Hurricane Wilma, she's moving northeast at 14 miles an hour, is expected to accelerate overnight tonight and tomorrow. Currently, the center is 210 miles west-southwest of Key West. And again, moving northeast at 14. Top winds now 105 miles an hour, which keeps Wilma at Category 2 status. On the satellite review, again, you can see where it was yesterday down here across the northeastern tip of the Yucatan. Here's where it is right now, moving in a northeasterly direction. If that continues, it would bring the core of the hurricane right across South Florida. If it should turn more to the south, it would allow the weaker side to spread farther south. If it should suddenly turn more to the north, that would bring the stronger side across more of South Florida. On its current track, if nothing changed, the track would be right across South Florida, say somewhere between Collier County and the Broward-Palm Beach County line up toward Lake Okeechobee, which means the strongest storm surge and possibly that 20 to 25-foot wall of water could affect the lower portion of the southwestern coast of Florida, mainly Sanibel, Marco Island, on down toward Flamingo on the lower southwest Florida coast. There would be about a 15-foot wall of water for the lower and the middle Keys, about a 3 to 5-foot storm surge for the upper Keys, and maybe extreme southeastern Miami-Dade County. That is the worst-case scenario if the track doesn't change. Hurricane warning continues in effect from Longboat Key all the way down through the Keys, all the way up to Titusville. That includes our entire NBC6 viewing area. A lot of folks are always concerned about the wind field, and we always try to tell you that a hurricane is not a point, but it's an area. In this case, it's important where the point crosses the coast because that'll be the dividing line between the weaker side and the stronger side. But for the most part, everybody's going to be experiencing at least tropical storm force conditions and maybe hurricane conditions as well. By the time this is said and done, this is where the wind field is right now. It's probably a little bit farther east than it really is, but generally bearing down on the lower Keys right now. By 11 o'clock tonight, just about all of the Keys, Miami-Dade and Broward County could be getting into some tropical storm force gusts. The hurricane force wind still just off the coast of the lower Keys, heading toward the dry Tortugas. After that, 7:30 in the morning on Monday, we're right in the heart of the action here, and some of these winds could be over 100 miles an hour, depending on which side of South Florida the hurricane passes. The winds could be in the 70-mile-an-hour range to the north and could be over 100 miles an hour to the south. So where this comes ashore and the exact track it takes will be very, very critical. Again, not just for the...
Good evening as we rejoin you with NBC6 News continuing coverage of Hurricane Wilma approaching our peninsula tonight. Preparing for the storm. It is something emergency management officials have been urging all week long. We began talking about Wilma a week ago. You see people in Weston taking time today to put up shutters, those who had not done it before. The window of opportunity for those preparations virtually over as sunset comes on us and as Hurricane Wilma makes its approach. And so hopefully people have heeded the call across our community as you see others making last-minute stops to do that last bit of supply gathering ahead of Wilma and what its winds will bring in terms of damage, which we hope there will not be a large amount of, but a storm of this size, you have to count on the fact that we're all going to have to deal with that in some form or fashion, however minor or major. And of course, the inconveniences posed by electrical outages almost certain to happen across a broad swath of the community. So everybody getting ready this night, and the best advice that we cannot emphasize enough coming from emergency managers is stay home, stay off the roads, let emergency crews do their jobs. No time tonight to be out on the highway, time to be home, have your preparations in place. Stay with us on NBC6, NBC6.net, and 87.7 on your FM dial for continuing coverage of Hurricane Wilma throughout this night and tomorrow and beyond. Right now, we know many of you have a lot of questions, a lot of last-minute concerns, things you'd like to ask about, maybe to hear a friendly voice on the other end of the phone who can give you some advice. We'd like to take you to our NBC6 Hurricane Helpline for just that kind of advice. We've got a lot of people standing by to help you, and Joe Rose is here to tell us about that.
Thank you very much, Michael, and you're right. We have a lot of information up here. The phone number is 954-622-6621. If you have some questions here at the last minute here and you're just wondering about some things, maybe you've never gone through the threat of a hurricane, we'll be more than glad, and that's why we'll be with you until 12 o'clock tonight and then reopen at 5 a.m. to help you out. Just a couple of things here real quickly. We've got a lot of calls from kids actually wondering about school on Monday and Tuesday has been canceled, of course, but some other things. I have a lot of elderly people that have called, getting a little nervous as it gets closer, and if you are an elderly person with special needs, we have some phone numbers we want to give out to you, 305-513-7700, and in Broward, 954-537-2888. Again, that's a special needs number, so people can help you through this if you haven't. As you can see, people behind us, I'm going to walk out of the shot here, already working and taking your calls right now and giving you as much information as possible. Had a lot of different things. Matter of fact, we just received information from Publix that they will be open tonight until 10 p.m. Hours will be normal in Dade and Broward County, and then they'll keep you updated according to what happens on tomorrow. So that's just a few of the things. Michael, have a lot more coming up on the phones here. Again, that number is 954-622-6621 for the Hurricane Helpline. Michael, back to you.
Joe, we appreciate it very much, and we'll keep that Hurricane Helpline open for you because we know you have many questions, many things that you would like to ask over the course of the next many hours as we approach the top of the hour, and momentarily we'll have the latest update on Hurricane Wilma. Again, now the time to make sure if you have those questions, you can call us or you can call 311 in Miami-Dade County. In short order, we'll put back up some helplines you can call in Miami-Dade and Broward County because we know a time like this, there are answer centers that can help you with many last-minute questions that you may have about Hurricane Wilma. And we emphasize that one of the things we're being asked to do is to remind you, use 911 only for what it is intended for, and that is life-threatening emergencies. This is not the time to tie up emergency phone operators because they need those lines open for true emergencies, and so often that happens. People understandably get nervous. They reach for 911. That's why they have other numbers. We're going to get those to you in short order as we all brace for Hurricane Wilma and its approach this night. All of us veterans now at getting through this, and this will be another storm where we will do precisely that together as a community. Part of that is bringing you the very, very latest on Wilma and its tracks so that we can all have a sense of assuredness about what we'll be dealing with over the course of the next several hours. Right. John Gerard has been a very busy man the past week. Right. We started tracking this last Saturday, John, or really looking at it.
Right.
And now it's upon us.
And remember, it was just a little swirl of clouds that developed into a depression, then eventually into a storm, then headed toward the Yucatan Peninsula, seemed to be moving away from South Florida. And we told you this thing is going to make a turn sooner or later. Well, it turned out to be later, and it's been an agonizing week of waiting and watching. But here it comes, and we're less than 12 hours away now from feeling the direct impacts of Hurricane Wilma, which right now is a Category 2 hurricane. It could strengthen to a Category 3 But right now the thinking is it'll come ashore as a 2 somewhere on the southwestern coast of Florida. It could be anywhere from Fort Myers all the way down to Key West. It's still about 12 hours away from making landfall, and we will continue to watch this accelerating as it heads toward the Florida Peninsula. So there is still some time for this to wobble one way or the other. That'll make a big difference as to who gets the highest storm surge, the highest risk of tornadoes, and who gets the strongest winds. But we'll tell you what we know right now and what we think will happen over the next 12 to 24 hours. First stop on our tour of weather sources here tonight is Weather Plus Viper radar. We have this on the 300-mile wide sweep. That's about as wide as you can get. And we are just beginning to see the eastern edge of the eye wall there. A couple of hundred miles away from Key West now, but as that moves farther and farther off to the east, that will be coming more and more into radar view. So we're going to be tracking this, nowcasting Hurricane Wilma via Weather Plus Viper technology. As we go through the night, you'll be able to see three-dimensionally those very, very strong winds and rain bands as they approach the lower Keys first, then the remainder of South Florida overnight tonight. You can see that some of those very intense rain bands are lurking just to the west of Key West right now. Switch on over to Weather Plus Doppler Live Radar. We have this on multi-sweep. We're going to be showing you about 3 or 4 different radar sites, Tampa, Melbourne, Fort Myers, and, of course, Miami as well. And we've got the spotlights on all 4 of those. And you can see we're scanning the skies, and we are going to be tracking the potential for severe weather tonight on our Weather Plus live Doppler radar throughout the night. I suspect that the break that we're in right now will not last for too many hours. It looks like the rain and the storms will start to fill in. We do have a tornado watch in effect for the area until 1 o'clock in the morning. We've got a flood watch in effect through Monday afternoon, and that hurricane warning continues in effect as well. I'm just showing you this to let you know that we are on top of it. We are tracking every single radar site available to us. And not only are we tracking the rain bands and the squalls, but we're tracking the potential for severe storms, the cloud-to-ground lightning strikes. We'll be waiting to see some of those shear markers that you have become so informed about over the past several hurricanes on Weather Plus Doppler Live Radar, when we're able to show you where the rotation is in the cloud and where the rotation is taking place on the ground. So you'll be seeing more of this now as you go through the night tonight. We're happy to be able to let you see some of this right now before things start getting really bad around here. So when you see this later on tonight, it won't be the first time that you've seen this. Okay, let's go to the map. I want to just go over with you one more time. Some of you have been saying, where can we go? Where should we go? The rule of thumb in hurricane forecasting is that you flee from the water, but you don't flee from the wind. You should have your shutters up right now. And really, you don't need to go anywhere. You need to stay tight exactly where you are, because that warning runs now from Titusville all the way on the other side to Longboat Key, including the entire Florida Keys chain. Let's go live now to the director of the National Hurricane Center, Max Mayfield. And Max, you have much of a voice left yet?
So far, so good, John. Thanks.
I hear tea and honey is good for that. But listen, Max, we've got to get ourselves through the next 12 to 24 hours here. Of course, we're talking about the impact on the west coast of Florida and the Florida Keys first, then on the east coast, I guess about 6 hours or so after that. But some of the in-house models that we're looking at here in our live radar indicating seas as high as 30 and 40 feet way out of the Gulf of Mexico. Do you think there's a chance that seas could be that high by the time Wilma arrives on the west coast late tonight?
I think they'll be much higher than that, John. But, you know, they're going to break off the coast, and that's not what you're going to get on the immediate coastline there. But that's certainly going to contribute to whatever storm surge we have there. There'll be the very dangerous waves on top of that surge, and that will do a lot of the damage. And you mentioned the, you know, hide from the wind, flee from the water there. That's absolutely true. If you will live in a well-built structure outside the storm surge zone. We still are hearing reports of people down the Keys in mobile homes, and I can assure you that that's not the place to be in any hurricane. And also, if you're in a storm surge zone, it doesn't matter how well built your house is. If that storm surge comes up, you obviously have a problem there. Absolutely, Max. We're assuming everybody is hunkered down with their shutters up, but you're right, that may not be the case for everybody. Storm surge, you touched on this, and you know, I'm just so afraid, Max. My fear with this hurricane is that this is going to be one of those underappreciated
risks of this hurricane is going to be the storm surge. We get so used to talking about the wind and the rain and the possibility of tornadoes, but talk a little bit more about the storm surge, because I'm real concerned about the lower Keys and the west coast of Florida.
Absolutely concerned about the Florida Keys, and the highest storm surge will be on the mainland here, near and to the south of where the center crosses the coast. And this is Marco Island right here. If the center comes anywhere near there in Collier County, that 9 to 17 feet of storm surge will be to the south there, all the way down to Cape Sable. If the track comes a little bit farther north, then you've got Marco Island and Naples included in that high area there. So this indeed will be a very significant storm surge, and even the Choccolosky and Everglades City. Those two areas are really going to get it if the track is close to being correct.
When is the last time a plane has been in? Is there a plane in there now? And when is the next time they're going to make another flight, get more data?
Well, the NOAA Hurricane Hunter has gone back. In fact, they probably landed by now at MacDill Air Force Base. The Air Force, I'm not actually sure, to tell you the honest truth, if they're still out there or not. But if they're not, we'll have another plane in there very shortly. And, that pressure had dropped a little bit right before that 5 p.m. advisory went out. So this is showing no signs of weakening right now at all. It's holding its own. And even on satellite here, it still looks like a very healthy, very strong Category 2 hurricane.
Do you still expect this to accelerate, Max, as we go through the night tonight? It's moving at about 14 right now. Do you think it's going to start speeding up? Because that's been the plan. It
will indeed continue to increase the forward motion. Then as it gets near Florida, I think it's going to take off like a rocket into the Atlantic. And if there's any good news, that's probably it. That'll be a relatively short-lived event here as it moves over us tomorrow morning.
All right, Max, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate your time, and my best to everybody out there at the Hurricane Center. Max Mayfield, Director of the National Hurricane Center, spending a few minutes with us now, bringing us up to date on the latest on Hurricane Wilma. Let's go right to the map now and show you the latest advisory. The advisory as of 5 p.m. Is indicating, again, a motion, as Max just mentioned, northeast at 14 miles an hour. Top winds 105 miles an hour, and it is not showing any signs of weakening, unfortunately. But, we'll continue to track this now between now and landfall, of course, which will be sometime in the next 12 hours on the west coast of Florida, maybe sooner, because it is expected to speed up just a bit. Currently, the center is 210 miles west-southwest of Key West. On the satellite review, this is what Max was just talking about as well. It seems to be maintaining that strong inner core. Not a real well-developed eye, at least looking down. There is an eye in there, and we'll be able to see that better on a radar presentation here once it gets a little bit closer to radar range. But the overcast sky is kind of obscuring the eye there, but we can still track the center. You can clearly see the center of circulation right there. And fortunately for the Yucatan Peninsula, it is now finally clearing out of there as the drier air is wrapping in. Skies have cleared across the Yucatan Peninsula. Over western tip of Cuba, where there's also a hurricane warning in effect, rainfall amounts could go over 40 inches by the time this is done. They're getting into some of those very heavy rain bands right now. And some of that tremendously heavy rain is also moving north in advance of the hurricane and should approach the lower Keys between now and about 11 o'clock tonight. You can see on the statewide look at Doppler radar, again, from the lower Keys all the way up to the Palm Beaches, not much happening at this moment, although there have been some very heavy bands going through the lower Keys. The mother lode is still back out here over the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and there is some tremendous rain falling there. The reason we're forecasting 4 to 8 inches instead of, say, 15 to 25 inches like we had with Katrina is not because there's any less moisture with this system, but because Wilma will be moving a lot faster than Katrina did. When Katrina moved across the area, it was only moving at about 5 to 10 miles an hour. Wilma should be moving at twice that speed as it moves across the state. That's what will preclude us from getting those heavy flooding situations like we saw with Katrina. But still, a flood watch is in effect. We could get about 4 to 8 inches of rain, especially near and to the south of the track, assuming the track goes, say, from about Fort Myers across the state, crossing the Lake Okeechobee area, then on out to sea around West Palm Beach. Here's the Hurricane Wilma wind field. This is where the core of hurricane force winds are tonight. Tropical storm force winds advancing toward the lower Keys right now. By 11 o'clock tonight, most of the Keys and most of South Florida will be at least beginning to, or should be at that time, experiencing tropical storm force winds. Notice the hurricane force winds by 7:30 in the morning, covering just about all of South Florida, but beginning to leave the lower Keys. You folks in the lower Keys, you're going to be about 6 hours ahead of everybody else, so you'll get it first, and it will end there first. But we could be looking at winds over 100 miles an hour across the Keys and the mainland, depending on where the center moves across the peninsula. This will be the weaker side to the north. This will be the stronger side to the south. So it's possible with the winds at around 105 miles an hour right now, if it's moving at about, say, 15 miles an hour to be conservative, at the speed it's moving right now, you add that on, there'll be about 120 mile an hour wind south of the track. You take away the forward motion, and you're looking at about a 90 mile an hour wind north. So the difference is pretty dramatic. There could be, 90 mile an hour winds north, could be up to 120 miles to the south. So where the exact track takes us is going to be extremely critical as to who will be on the strong side and who will be on the weaker side. And that, of course, it's all relative. There really is not a weak side. It'll just be weaker. And, of course, the most important impact, besides the wind, will be the possibility of some major storm surge flooding south of the track. So the track is something we'll be keeping track of moment by moment. If we see even a slightest little blip, slightest little glitch on the radar, we're not going to wait for the advisory to come out. We're going to get on the air and tell you, look, this thing is changing. But so far, we see this taking a dead northeasterly track right across South Florida. Eventually, there's hurricane-force winds moving out to sea, tropical storm-force winds following right behind. And you'll be happy to know the winds will switch around to the northwest, and a cold front will swing through South Florida. And by Monday night, Tuesday morning, we'll be down in the 60s. By Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, we could be down in the 50s for low temperatures here once Wilma goes by. And by the way, just something I want to talk about real quickly. As Wilma moves away, it will get pulled back toward the East Coast, and it's possible, and you're hearing me correctly, it's possible this could become a major snowstorm for the mountains of New England as we head toward the end of the week because of all the moisture and all the cold air that's just lingering and poised over the New England states. This is going to turn out to be one of the more amazing storms in history, I would have a feeling, by the time this is all done from start to finish. Not only has the track been truly amazing, but it could turn out to be one of historic proportions for the Northeast as well, a hurricane snowstorm possibly for New England. Michael, I think by the time we're done with this, we will have easily said we've seen it all. Yeah,
history making to say the very, very least, and
exactly.
Tragically so in the case of Katrina. And now dealing with Wilma. John Gerard, thank you for yeoman work, and we know you'll be with us throughout the night.
Right.
Get back to those computer models, which your eyes are going to turn into squares.
That's okay. It's worth it.
Absolutely. We appreciate all the hard work. Right now, we want to take you to one of the places in the potential strike zone that John's been talking so very much about. That is Naples, Florida, and Joel Conable is live there to give us an assessment of the situation at this hour. Joel?
Michael, John Gerard was talking about the storm surge. That's the major concern, of course, here in Naples. City officials telling us that their concern is that they have the Gulf of Mexico over on one side, Naples Bay on the other, and it could really devastate this area. If the storm surge were to move in, this area could be underwater very quickly. Right now, the winds have started to pick up. Very, very, very minor gusts that we're feeling. We've had a few rain bands move through, but I was able to take off the raincoat for a while because we haven't seen any rain right now. Looking out over the horizon, though, you do see the clouds, the dark clouds, a little bit of lightning over the ocean, and those clouds moving in that counterclockwise direction. You can actually see that very markedly over the horizon right now. But a mandatory evacuation here in Naples went into effect on Friday at 12 noon. All the people from coastal areas were supposed to be out by 8 a.m. this morning. And as of 6 o'clock tonight, which is about an hour and 15 minutes ago, a mandatory curfew went into effect for the city of Naples. City officials telling us they did not want people to be on the road because emergency services won't be available when the height of the storm hits. So they want to get everyone inside the shelters, inside their homes, and just to stay there till this storm passes. And historically, historians know the last time Naples had a direct hit from a storm was Hurricane Donna 45 years ago, back in 1960, and that devastated this area. So the big question that we're all waiting to see is exactly what this storm will do and how big that storm surge will be and how damaging the winds will be. And we'll, of course, have to wait and see. Back to you.
That breeds overconfidence, not having been hit so very long. You've talked for the last several days about them having to tell people you really, really need to get out of there. And we know in the Florida Keys, a lot have not listened at the state level. A little earlier, they told us how concerned they are. Give us your sense of that, having been there for the last few days.
You know, the unusual thing, Michael, just talking to Mark Thompson, my photographer, who's covered a lot of hurricanes over the last several years, is that we don't normally arrive so many days before a hurricane hits. Usually we get here, a hurricane hits, and then it's over with. People left here very, very early. As of Tuesday, according to the mayor, people were already out before the evacuation order went up. And as of Friday, they're saying that at least 50% of the people who live here in Collier County, where Naples is, were already out of here. So I think people really listen to those evacuation orders, and I think we have a very different story here than we do with the folks who live down in the Keys. So yes, people are out, people are in shelters, shelters are filling up, people are moving inland, which is a great thing because of that storm surge that city officials and emergency officials are so worried about.
Well, again, we wish all safety to you and Mark Thompson, both veterans of storm coverage, and particularly Mark, who I've been out with many times. So we wish both of you the very, very best over there. And it certainly is, as Joel points out, a sharp contrast to at least what we're hearing in the Florida Keys, where far fewer people than Joel have just mentioned, at least according to early reports, have paid attention, deciding to ride out a storm. And that is what makes emergency managers cringe, people who decide they know more than forecasters and officials who have urged people to get out of low-lying areas. And the Florida Keys qualifies more than anywhere else in the state of Florida. And we'll have to see how those who did not leave weather Wilma. You're taking a look at our hurricane helpline. We know so many of you have questions, not necessarily big emergencies. That's not what our helpline's for, but it is for questions you might have about last-minute things you need to do around the house, certain questions about how to take care of the pool, how to take care of different aspects of your own personal preparations. And we want to allow you that chance to call us as an extra resource in the hours ahead. You see the number up there, 954-622-6621. Sometimes we're able to direct you to an expert resource, perhaps, that can give you more help. But in any event, we want you to know that throughout Hurricane Wilma, our hurricane helpline will be there to help you. Again, 954-622-6621. I think you see Joe Rose there, among others, who are lending a helping hand. We want to hear from you if you have any concerns or questions as we once again in our community weather yet another storm, which we will do together. As so often happens, we see this community come together in tough times or worrisome times like this, like tonight, and get through it as we have so many times in the past. And that in part, large parts, why we want our hurricane helpline to be part of that effort. Again, 954-622-6621. A look at our primetime lineup. We know many of you looking forward to that every Sunday at 8 p.m. The West Wing, 9 p.m. Law and Order, Criminal Intent, 10 p.m. Crossing Jordan. You'll be able to see all of your favorite Sunday night lineup here on NBC6, but you'll need to go to NBC6.net so that you can tune in to your Sunday night lineup. Again, finding all of it beginning at 8 on NBC6.net. Now on to a story about people who are saying for better or worse, for richer or poorer, for Wilma's wins, for delays and all, we'll stick it out. Those last words might have to be added to the wedding vows for one couple our odds are bumped into, Wilma delaying their nuptials, but they say they'll get along just fine and weather the storm. And Ari Odzer takes a look at all that.
Last Thursday, we told you about a couple whose wedding was in jeopardy because of Wilma's approach, but they toughed it out. They didn't cancel it, and today, Sunday, here they are about to get married here at the Westin Diplomat in Hollywood.
The hurricane will be here tonight, tomorrow, and I'm kind of upset that my family and friends, they have already got calls. All the airlines have canceled everything, but this gives me more time to hang out with them. So
at least you get to have your wedding.
Yeah, at least we get to have the wedding.
Now that you've gone through that horrible week of uncertainty and the wedding's actually happening, how satisfying is this?
It's incredible. It's really great. It's been really good to have all the family here, and everybody is pretty much coming except for a couple of cancellations that were coming in today. But everything is good, and our honeymoon's going to be a little delayed, but we're totally fine with that.
At least you have the wedding.
Exactly. At least we have the wedding.
At least Wilma's not blowing it away.
No, she's not. But we're really happy.
This isn't exactly the wedding they wanted. They had planned to get married outside by the beach. Wilma took care of that, but it couldn't stop the entire wedding from happening. At least they got married indoors, not outside like they wanted, but score one for love over a hurricane. In Hollywood, Ari Odzer, NBC6.
So a little bit of miscommunication there. They were, in fact, able to get married, if not precisely on the spot they wanted, nonetheless, with a lot of happiness and big smiles. And we wish them all the very best in their future. We want to take a look around South Florida right now. Miccosukee Cam, you begin to see as Sunset's well beyond us, the darkening skies and the clouds, and we'll see them racing across our skies over the next 12 to 18 hours as Wilma makes her effects felt. Cocoa Walk Cam, again, at the moment, still a fairly placid scene across much of our community, but do not let your guard down. By about 11 o'clock tonight, we're told we'll begin to feel tropical storm strength winds and then hurricane force winds on into the early morning. Now is the time to be at home. Hopefully all of your preparations are complete and to ride out Hurricane Wilma, as we all will, over the long night ahead and the long early morning ahead as well. And with that, we'll be right back with more of your continuing coverage of Hurricane Wilma. Please stay with us.
You know, I would almost guarantee they're getting sustained tropical storm force winds and that. Another couple of hours here, the sustained storm force winds on the southwest coast, and then sometime after midnight for Miami-Dade County, and it's going to continue to go downhill after that. The bottom line, tomorrow morning is not going to be a good time, even most of the day tomorrow, to be driving around.
Absolutely, Max. I think everybody should pretty much be where they're going to be right now. That we're telling everybody to stay safe, stay indoors, and stay off the roads. The timing is going to be, I guess, just deteriorating as we go through the night and into the day tomorrow. And then, I guess, getting better, I guess, gradually later on tomorrow. But talk about the aspects of post-Hurricane Wilma. Don't more people die after a hurricane than before or during?
Yeah, well, that varies on the hurricane. That, you know, wasn't the case in, you know, some of the large loss of lives that we've had here. But the, you know, we almost always have some fires, people lighting candles when the power goes out and the house catches on fire. The generators, running generators inside, you know, that's not the right thing to do. People walking around in flooded out areas and being electrocuted. Then, of course, the chainsaw accidents and falling off ladders, things like that. So just because the hurricane's over, we almost always have some very significant loss of life afterwards. We need to be very, very careful.
Max, I want to ask you about the comparisons between this and, say, Katrina. We've had a lot of folks emailing us and calling us here at the station today, wanting to know, with Katrina fresh on their minds here in South Florida, how does this stack up? Will you think it'll be worse or not as bad as Katrina?
Yeah, well, they're all different.
Sure.
You know, the tracks, the size, intensities, but Katrina, the strong winds were all really focused in a relatively small eye wall, and that, you know, if you're not in that eye wall, it wasn't that bad at all. And then that eye wall, as it made landfall near the Miami-Dade Broward County line, moved southwestward and covered a pretty good portion of Miami-Dade County. This one is even larger, and it also is stronger. Now, we may see, you know, a little bit of decrease here, but it could very well come on shore of the West Coast as a Category 3 hurricane. So I actually think that the winds will be stronger than in Katrina. Of course, a lot of our trees have already been knocked down, and I think everything you see here in red, if it makes landfall as forecast over in Collier County and exits near Palm Beach County, I think we'll have hurricane conditions, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County, and, of course, Monroe.
All right, Max, thanks so much. We appreciate you staying on top of that for us. Makes our job so much easier when you have such expertise back there at the Hurricane Center, guys. And Tony and Jackie, I tell you, our job is to get the word out. We add a little bit of dressing to the salad here, but really those are the guys that make the salad over there, and they're doing just a phenomenal job. Be advised again, tornado possibilities, flooding possibilities, and of course the hurricane warning is in effect for all of South Florida, western Cuba, also the northwestern Bahamas tonight as well. Tony, Jackie.
You know, interesting that Max Mayfield still thinks that there's the possibility that Wilma will intensify to a Category 3 when it hits the southwest Florida.
Yeah, and they have been steadfast in this track. They have not varied. You know, they kept saying all along that this would go eastward and that South Florida was going to be impacted. And boy, it has been on that track now for the same track for 3 or 4 days.
Well, one thing we can surely expect here in South Florida are power outages. There is the number to call if you encounter a power outage in your home. That number is 1-800-4-OUTAGE.
And remember, FP&L pretty much knows where the power outages are. You know, because everything is on a grid, but nonetheless, there is your phone number. And keep in mind that with Katrina, and as Max Mayfield just said, this is a more powerful storm than Katrina. We had 1.2 million people without power in Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. chances are we're going to be topping that number with this.
During Hurricane Katrina, it took just over a week to get power restored to all of those people. So we can expect, especially if this, as Max Mayfield said, is a bigger system, we can expect power outages to a big degree, and obviously for restoration to take at least that amount of time.
If you're in the Keys, the Keys Cooperative, we have two numbers here, one in Tavernier, one in Marathon. The number in Tavernier, 305-852-2431, and in Marathon, 305-743-5344.
As always, you can call our helpline here at NBC6. That number is 954-622-6621. As a matter of fact, Joe Rose is there live with some of the questions that we're getting there at NBC6. Joe?
Well, Jackie, first of all, I want to let everybody know, as you just gave out our number, 954-622-6621. We'll be here until midnight. If you have any questions, we can help you any way possible, from some of the things we've been asked here recently about garbage pickup. Of course, there will be no garbage pickup tomorrow in Dade or Broward County. We've also had a lot of elderly people call that need assistance. And again, I'd like to give that phone number out. There is a special line there. The special needs number is 305-513-7700 in Dade and 954-537-2888. That's the number for Broward County if you need help of any kind. That's been a lot of the questions. People still calling in about school. There will be no school, of course, a public school in Dade or Broward County on Monday or Tuesday. And those are just a few of the questions coming in, as people obviously wanting to know when the worst part of this is going to hit in Dade and Broward County and when it will finally be over. These things are tough, obviously, for everybody to go through, especially if you're living here in South Florida for the first time and you've never been and only heard about hurricanes. You can imagine what it's like for those people. Back to you guys.
Okay,
Right,
Joe, thank you very much. We know that we've received many calls also about the primetime programming here on NBC6. And if you're still looking to see Crossing Jordan, which begins at 10 o'clock, you can always go to NBC6.net and watch that in its entirety.
And we're also, for those of you who have family and friends in other parts of the country and they're wondering how you're doing and how the storm is starting to impact South Florida, we're also streaming our coverage live on the internet, also at NBC6.net. So there are a number of ways that your friends can stay in touch with what's going on here in South Florida as well.
As we look at that radar, Hurricane Wilma, 140 miles west-southwest of Key West, still a strong Category 2 hurricane with winds up to 105 miles per hour. And it is moving relatively quickly at northeast 15 miles per hour. But Max Mayfield says that will increase in its speed as soon as it hits southwest Florida.
We seem to have a signature picture with every hurricane. For the ones last year, when they approached the East Coast, we look at the pier in Deerfield Beach. Now we're looking at Fort Myers, and this is going to be the shot we're going to be using here as our barometer. The storm is starting to make its way and make its presence felt on the west coast of South Florida. We'll be back with more of our continuing coverage of Wilma right after this.
As Hurricane Wilma moves closer toward the South Florida coast.
This is something that we need to really pay some close attention to.
Turn to South Florida's only all-digital weather network.
You're watching NBC6 Weather Plus.
On the air.
Having a hurricane plan is absolutely essential.
Radio.
The strongest Atlantic hurricane on record.
Internet.
It's watching Wilma down across the Caribbean, rapid intensification.
When it comes to keeping you informed with up-to-the-minute severe weather coverage, trust the station South Florida turns to. NBC6 is Weather Plus.
Building the fastest car in its class doesn't mean leaving intelligence, beauty, and control behind. Introducing all-new 306 horsepower IS from Lexus at your South Florida Lexus dealer.
Millions of dollars. Well, that works for me.
If I won, he'd be carrying my bag.
Well, I think the first thing we would do is get 2 television sets, one for him and one for me.
She's going to day camp, and for me, day spa.
On average, 1 million people win every week playing these games of the Florida Lottery.
Lordy, Lordy. Did you say skybar?
$1 million a week are gonna win.
Absolutely.
Why not you?
I want this one.
What a weekend.
Good, my skin felt so smooth. No stress. No husband.
See you. Thanks for driving.
As usual. Back to reality.
Performance, utility, and envy. SRX. Cadillac. Breakthrough. Visit your South Florida Cadillac dealer for this attractive offer. Residency restrictions apply.
Only NBC6 has the Weather Plus Hurricane Hummer, taking you into the storm for the most current information. Complete severe weather forecasts from mobile ThreatNet technology. The most accurate information. Nobody gets you closer. NBC6 is Weather Plus. Live, this is NBC6 continuing coverage of Hurricane Wilma.
Good evening, I'm Michael Williams, wishing you and yours a good and safe evening. The emphasis on safe as we see the satellite imagery of Hurricane Wilma bearing down on the Florida coastline at this hour. A live look at Fort Myers Beach at this hour as the wind-whipped surf begins to make itself shown. The entire southern half of our Florida peninsula under the crosshairs, potentially, of Hurricane Wilma this night. Millions of people across our state have been asked to prepare over the past week as you look at video of the southernmost point of the continental U.S., the Florida Keys, as the surf begins to pour over some of the seawalls there. And on this night, there are worries that far too many people in the Florida Keys did not heed mandatory evacuation orders. How that will all play out as we take a look at the southernmost point itself in Key West is something we will find out in the next 12 to 18 hours as bad weather begins to roll in from Key West up through, again, as we said, the entire southern half of the peninsula, all because Hurricane Wilma now making its presence very much felt on this night. A shelter in Coral Springs as people who had nowhere else to go gather for what will be a long night. A number of shelters open throughout Miami-Dade and Broward counties as the Red Cross and other relief agencies also get ready for a long night, putting people up for the night, supplying them food, water, and other necessary items to get through a night of storms where winds may well top in many areas well in excess of 100 miles per hour, depending ultimately on the intensity and the final track of Wilma. As we again go back to the satellite loop in just a moment, as we come to the top of the hour, meteorologist John Gerard will give us the latest positioning track. The bottom line right now is your preparations, of course, have been complete. We certainly hope, and now is the time from now through a good bit of tomorrow to stay where you are, to stay safe, stay off of the roads. As we look at our Miccosukee Skycam network, John Gerard coming up here momentarily with the very latest on Wilma's positioning. Again, the weather will rapidly deteriorate throughout our region over the course of the rest of the night and on into the morning. It will happen in the Florida Keys first, as John has emphasized, but all of us will soon be seeing the full effects of Hurricane Wilma. We'd also like to, at this moment, to welcome our viewers from the WB39 as we simulcast our coverage on NBC6 and WB39 for the next half hour or so. And meteorologist John Gerard here with the very latest for all of you. John?
All right, thanks a lot, Michael. Good evening, everybody. We have a special 10 o'clock p.m. position update now. This is not the 11 o'clock advisory where we get the updated forecast track, but this is a position update, especially for you here at 10 o'clock. We were able to tell you now that Wilma still has top winds of 110 miles an hour, but in this position update from the National Hurricane Center, they're telling us that it is very close to Category 3 status. Of course, if it goes up 5 more miles an hour on the wind, it'll be Category 3. I wouldn't be surprised on the 11 o'clock advisory if it does become a Category 3 hurricane. Right now, it is still a 2, but on the Saffir-Simpson scale, again, very close. It's on the high end of Category 2 status. It's moving northeast at 15 miles an hour. To maximum sustained winds are 110 miles an hour. The pressure, 958 millibars. And it is currently centered 160 miles west-southwest of Key West. However, remember, keep in mind that 160 miles, tropical storm force winds extend out well over 200 miles from the center. So they're certainly within the tropical storm force wind range right now across places like Key West, Big Pine Key, over toward Marathon as well. So that's where the tropical storm force sustained winds are right now. And soon they will work their way up the west coast of Florida as Wilma continues to head off to the northeast at 15 miles an hour. The timeline is that the lower Keys are in it now, and it will get progressively worse from here. The middle and upper Keys will see these tropical storm force winds moving in probably shortly after midnight. And then for those of us here on the mainland in Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County, we're looking at tropical storm force winds developing between 2 and 6 a.m. And then from 6 a.m. until about 2 p.m., we're going to be watching increasingly deteriorating conditions during the day. Then after 2 p.m., we'll see things beginning to wind on down fairly quickly as we get later in the day. Let's switch on over to Weather Plus Viper radar. And we're tracking the eye of Hurricane Wilma via Weather Plus Viper. And you can see a very broad center of circulation right there with some very, very heavy rain bands wrapping around close to the center, also now extending out for a couple of 100 miles east of the center. And we'll continue to track that as it moves northeast at about 15 miles an hour. The lower Keys and Florida's west coast up toward Naples, Marco Island, on down towards Sanibel, and north from there toward Fort Myers and Fort Myers Beach. Certainly about to get hit very hard by some of those torrentially heavy rain bands moving in. And any one of those rain bands could have wind gusts of 50 to 70 miles an hour. So the action has begun for the West Coast, and it's just a matter of time before the bad weather moves in here on the East Coast as well. We're sitting here in some pretty good shape for the moment. Take a look at Weather Plus Doppler live radar, and you can see that here on the east coast of Florida, it's still fairly quiet out there, a little bit of a tropical breeze, and that is just about it. However, you see all of that bad news off to our west. It will be a far different story here late tonight and early tomorrow morning, and you'll wonder what happened. Well, that's Wilma moving in from southwest to northeast across the area. We're able to show you shear markers as they occur. We had one. It seems to have disappeared now, but we'll be watching Weather Plus Doppler live radar for possible severe weather indicators. And when we see one, we'll let you know that that's where a possible tornado could be forming. All right, let's switch on over to our other source here. I want to show you the satellite look from outer space. And you can see that, again, the eye is beginning to clear out now. And that is a sign of a system that is becoming better organized. We don't see too much of a change on the track over the past 3 or 4 hours. Still seems to be heading northeast on a due northeasterly heading at about 15 miles an hour. On the statewide look at National Weather Service Doppler radars, look at how far north some of these rain bands have occurred, way up in Orlando. And this is why we tell you, you know, when so much of the area is under a warning like it is right now, and you want to know where to go, sometimes you're better off just staying close to home, put the shutters up, and stay safe. Unless you are told to evacuate, you probably shouldn't. Unless you're in a mobile home park, you probably shouldn't. You should probably stay exactly where you are, because you may think you're in better shape by leaving Miami and going to Orlando because it's farther north. And look at that. Orlando could be getting some severe weather tonight, the possibility of tornadoes up there as well. So, you know, the rule of thumb is you evacuate tens of miles, not hundreds of miles, get to a nearby shelter, but to drive hundreds of miles and put yourself in greater danger is just not necessary, and it's just not it's not recommended. You can see on the radar review also the eye is beginning to show up there as well. I mean, the eye has always been there, but now it's coming into radar range, and it continues to head off somewhere between Fort Myers and Key West. That would appear to be the most likely landfall spot at this hour. That's critical primarily for the following reason, because anybody south of there will have the greatest storm surge, the greatest chance of tornadoes, severe weather, the greatest risk of flash floods, and the strongest winds. Here's a look at the wind field. Now, this will change on the 11 o'clock advisory, but this has been pretty much the case throughout the day here. 11 o'clock tonight, you'll see the yellows, the tropical storm force winds, the hurricane force winds as indicated by the orange. By 7:30 in the morning, most, if not all of South Florida will be experiencing hurricane conditions. Now, again, depending on the exact track, we'll have winds of over 100 miles an hour to the south of there, and winds of about 75 miles to the north of there. So again, it's going to be very critical as to exactly the track that this takes as it works its way across South Florida. And I know you're wondering, I'm wondering, I live here too, my family is here, and you and yours are here as well. In case you're wondering, if the track takes the expected path that we think it will, my feeling right now is that Palm Beach and Broward County would be most vulnerable to getting the worst conditions. That's the way it would appear right now. It's possible the track could shift a little farther north, but at this hour, if you asked me who's going to get it the worst, I would say Broward and Palm Beach County, also over toward Lee and Collier County as well. Everybody south of there would still be in the danger zone because you'd be on the strong side, but if the hurricane tracks the way we think it will, you'd be far enough away in the lower and middle keys by midday tomorrow so that even though you're on the stronger side, you'll be watching those hurricane-force winds winding down rapidly as you head toward the afternoon. Again, this could change. We'll see what the 11 o'clock advisory holds in store, but I would definitely keep that in mind, especially if you're in Broward and Palm Beach County. And don't forget, Miami-Dade County and the Keys, you're also under a hurricane warning at this time. Here is the official forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. And again, this has been pretty much the track they've been going with all week long. It still brings it right across South Florida. Too close to call as exactly which part of which county will bear the brunt of this. But, you know, we are speculating here. We think it'll be, again, Lee and Collier County, and also on over toward Broward and Palm Beach County. Now, again, that is not to say Miami-Dade County, you're going to be off the hook. We don't want to have any miscommunication here like we had with Katrina when we thought it was going to go north and it went a little bit south. We're all in the cone, and everybody is going to feel the impact of this hurricane over the next 12 to 18 hours. So some of Wilma's woes, to recap: Wilma, winds of over 100 miles an hour, isolated tornadoes, possible flooding, 4 to 8 inches is possible, significant storm surge, especially across southwest Florida coast and also in the middle and lower Keys. In the meantime, we also have Tropical Depression Alpha. Haven't talked too much about this, but the Hurricane Center is watching this as well. It's been downgraded from a tropical storm earlier today, currently centered 40 miles southeast of Great Anagua in the Bahamas. Earlier, a tropical storm warning, I should say, was issued for the Bahamas. That has since been discontinued because it looks like it will be falling apart. As far as the actual weather conditions are concerned, it looks like Wilma will move across the state tonight and then start to speed up as we go through the day tomorrow. As a cold front moves to the south, that will increase the steering currents around Wilma. And what's actually going to happen here, once Wilma is gone, we're going to see that cold front moving down from the north to the south, and we'll see much, much cooler and drier northwesterly winds building on down. You're going to notice a big difference in our temperatures here. Look at our 6-day forecast. Tomorrow, it's going to be an all Wilma Monday tomorrow. And then look at these beautiful conditions coming in Tuesday and Wednesday. Lots of sunny skies. We'll need a couple of days to get cleaned up around here. And you'll see nighttime lows down into the 50s as we head toward the early portion of Tuesday and Wednesday morning. Back to Weather Plus Doppler live radar right now. And we do have another one of those shear markers. This is what I was telling you about. When we see these, we're going to talk about these. This is an upper level shear marker indicating some possible, there's another one there, possible rotation in the clouds. I want to emphasize again, the folks at the Hurricane Center are saying that there is a very high chance of tornadoes with this. The system is coming in from the southwest to the northeast. The angle, the rotation, and also the jet stream cutting in aloft will give us a definite possibility of tornadoes, and we will continue to watch for that possibility. And lo and behold, now we do have a tornado warning for the lower Keys at 10:30. National Weather Service Doppler radar indicated a violent waterspout 13 miles south of Key West. Now, that's not what you're seeing right there. Those are other ones also popping up right now, about 50 or so miles to the south of Key West. But this waterspout, 13 miles south of Key West, moving north, get this, at 60 miles an hour. The tornado was expected to be near Key West in about the next 5 minutes. It'll be near Big Coppitt Key, Boca Chica, Shark Key, Stock Island in the next 5 minutes as well. Once again, a tornado warning in effect for the lower Keys right around Key West. And, you know, Michael, this is something we're going to be tracking throughout the night. Not just the progress of Wilma, but these tornado warnings are going to be issued very, very quickly tonight. And we're going to stay on top of it. I urge everybody to stay tuned because a warning might be issued for just about anybody from now until about midday tomorrow.
It's why everybody, no matter where they are in South Florida, right, Miami-Dade, Broward, Collier County to the West Coast, Monroe County, needs to sit tight. And John, for people who've been joining us throughout the day, are we seeing a more active potential tornado possibility because you've got this cold weather system interacting with warm, moist air, which creates a lot of energy there?
Absolutely. We've got some very, very strong winds in the upper atmosphere as well, Michael. I mean, we have the potential for rotation aloft. We have the potential for some rotation at cloud level and also rotation at ground level just because of the rotation around the hurricane. Plus, we've got the cold front coming down from the north. This is going to be one of those aspects of Hurricane Wilma that we're going to have to pay close attention to because there could be considerable damage across parts of South Florida and not all of it will be from the hurricane. Some of it will be from tornadoes.
Meteorologist John Gerard, who with all of our extensive technology will be monitoring that threat along with the direct threat from the hurricane itself throughout the evening and the night. Keep it right here on NBC6. Of course, you joining us on the WB 39 News at 10 as we simulcast. And also know that you can always catch us on NBC6.net. And when the power goes out, and I say when because it's inevitable that a lot of us will see power outages, 87.7 on your FM dial for full and continuous NBC6 coverage. Joel Conable in one of the areas in the potential middle of the strike zone, Naples, Florida. He has the very latest from there live. Joel?
Yeah, we're not seeing the conditions that Tom Yamas is seeing down in Key West. I saw him getting battered pretty badly. We've only had some passing rain showers, a little bit of wind picking up here, but that's often the case with the feeder bands that are moving in. But in Naples right now, the evacuation order has already been fulfilled. People got out at 8 o'clock this morning to go inland, and there's a mandatory curfew that went into effect at 6 p.m. tonight. The historic district of Naples, which sits in between the Gulf of Mexico and Naples Bay, is completely empty tonight. Stores are boarded up. We only found one restaurant that was open for a couple of hours tonight, feeding customers, and then they shut their doors as well. People very concerned about the storm surge here, Michael. People are worried because in Hurricane Donna, which was a long time ago, back in 1960, it left historic Naples under 16 feet of water. So that is the concern here tonight, as well as the wind. As many people know, Naples has been built up over the last 20 years. There are multi-million-dollar homes and hotels and apartments and condos all built within about 100 yards of the shoreline, if not closer. So we're waiting to see the real strong effects of Wilma as it continues to head up the southwest coast of Florida. But as of right now, it's almost a dead calm. The wind has really died down. The rain's not here, and we're just waiting to see the intensity of this storm in the next couple of hours. Michael?
Joel, talk a little bit about the particulars of the geography there. Many of our viewers familiar with the Naples area, many not. Talk about some of the geography that may make it more susceptible to the kind of storm surge you've been talking about and monitoring for us.
I think the geography that makes it so susceptible is the fact that you have the Gulf of Mexico with the breakers on the beach side. That's the coastal side. And then you only have not even, I don't think it's a quarter mile of land before you hit Naples Bay. And in some areas, it's even thinner than that. So you can imagine if this storm surge comes into the bay and then off the Gulf, that area is going to get covered very, very quickly, very easily. I was looking at a newspaper here that they kind of explained how the storm surge works. And they said with a Category 1, the storm surge can go almost a mile inland, if not a mile and a half inland in some cases. So we're talking about a Category 2 storm here, and we're right now about a quarter of a mile from the coastline. So if that storm surge came in as strong as they think it's going to come in, where I'm standing right now, I'd be standing in some pretty deep water as well.
Very interesting how the contours of the coastline from 20 miles one way or the other can change all that, as you've been telling us for the last several days. Very little in the way of a buffer zone. What about the fact in Naples, Joel, that they do have a largely elderly population in many respects? It does put a certain extra strain on emergency resources there. Are they able to cope with that? Do they feel they have everything they need to cope with a population that in many respects does skew a lot older than perhaps many other communities?
I think they do, and I think they're able to cope with it very well. The evacuation order went up at 12 noon on Friday, which was fairly early, according to some business owners and people here. And part of that evacuation order meant that immediately paramedics moved into nursing homes and assisted living facilities and helped evacuate those people. And then there are about a dozen shelters open inland in the Collier County area, schools and other areas that are other buildings that are able to sustain a Category 2, Category 3 hurricane. And there are thousands of people in those shelters already. So they really got people out early. And as far as the elderly population, I think based on what we saw and based on what emergency operations officials are telling us, very few older people stayed here, and especially those who are dependent on assisted living or have special medical conditions. Those people were taken out very early.
Joel Conable, who's been monitoring the situation in Naples, Florida, indeed all up and down the southwest Florida coastline the last several days. We'll be riding out the storm there. We thank you again for your live report, Joel. And our continuing coverage, both on NBC6 and the WB 39 News, simulcasted coverage right now will continue in just a moment. Hurricane Wilma, as it approaches the state of Florida, we have crews across the state covering the very latest, and our weather team monitoring the very latest developments on the storm's track and intensity. We'll be right back.
There is still a real Caribbean out there. Out past the crowds and the theme parks, where green monkeys and flying fish mingle with laughter and sugarcane and breathtaking natural beauty. Barbados.
An 8-day, 7-night Best of Barbados vacation starts at $595 per person, including hotel and round-trip airfare. Visit Liberty Travel at libertytravel.com.
I definitely took a risk leaving the Real Yellow Pages. I allocated some of my budget to the other directories because I wanted to see if, in fact, they would work for us as well as the Real Yellow Pages. However, it just didn't work for us. I wasn't the results I had with the other directories. I won't be lured by any of those other directories ever again. The Real Yellow Pages works.
Don't miss your chance to advertise. Call 1-800-GET-REAL.
Live, this is NBC6 continuing coverage of Hurricane Wilma.
Rejoining us now for our continuing NBC6 coverage, simulcasted at the moment on WB39 News as well. As you look at a picture from Fort Myers, the waves starting to come ashore with a bit more intensity, all reminders of the early effects of the front and leading edge of Hurricane Wilma. And the situation is only going to downhill from here for the next many hours, really through midday tomorrow. The Keys will begin to feel the impact the soonest. Already tornado warnings up and about in the Keys. Very possible will be extended here. So it's going to be a long, long night. We certainly hope that most of you who are watching or perhaps listening to us on 87.7 FM, which is a resource that will be available to you all through this coverage and all the time, as a matter of fact, especially if the power goes out. We want you to be aware of that. You can find us on 87.7 on the FM dial. But in any regard, we hope most of you watching and listening have taken care of all your preparations. We've really had about a week to think about this. And the best thing right now, as we've emphasized, stay where you are, stay safe. Count on the fact and have confidence in the fact that your preparations, well thought out, will, as they have before, see you through this storm, see our community through this storm, and that we will all be communicating both your needs and the time leading up to and after the storm to the appropriate people, making sure that everybody lends everyone else a helping hand through Hurricane Wilma. As you look at the satellite loop of Hurricane Wilma looming ever larger in our consciousness and on the satellite screen as it makes its approach, the Florida Keys will first, as you've heard throughout the day, be feeling the impact of this storm. And as you've heard, one of the underlying stories there is that people very hurricane fatigued in the Florida Keys with Dennis and Rita and to some extent Katrina, and now Hurricane Wilma forcing mandatory evacuation calls. As you take a live look of the wind-whipped situation from our Miccosukee cam, and we'll go around our Skycam network throughout the evening and go to reporters across the state. But there is a worry that far too many people defied mandatory evacuation orders in the Florida Keys. Roughly 70,000 people, as you look at downtown Miami this night, live in the Florida Keys, and by some estimates, perhaps only 1 in 5, although these are estimates, actually evacuated. No precise numbers, but a big concern to emergency managers who always want everyone to listen to those calls for evacuation. And as we've said throughout the evening, to some great extent, you're playing roulette with Mother Nature when you decide that you'll be able to ride it out. We'll see how good a call that was for people, because at this point, nothing to do but ride it out. Nowhere to go now. As you continue to look at our Skycam network, and NBC6 meteorologist John Gerard here as he continues to update you at home about the very latest on this impending storm.
Thank you, Michael. From the Weather Plus Storm Center, I just want to let you know we've got a 10 o'clock advisory that I want to pass along to you, but there is going to be a very, very important update at 11 o'clock. There's really no stopping this hurricane now. It's on a northeasterly track heading right for us, but we will get an update on the exact intensity and see if the folks at the Hurricane Center feel like this will wobble one way or the other as we get into the overnight hours. But here is what we call a position update. Nothing else really updated here except the position. It's currently centered at 24.0 north, 84.2 west. Top winds are 110 miles an hour. And I have a feeling by looking at the satellite loops over the past several hours that this Category 2 hurricane is on the verge of becoming a Category 3 hurricane, because it's very close to that right now. If it gets up to 115, it'll be a Category 3. It's very close to that right now. And when you look at the satellite review, I just updated this loop just 30 seconds ago, and you can see it moving steadily on a northeasterly track. And look at the eye beginning to clear out now. So that process of conservation of angular momentum, it's a very scientific term, but this is the old analogy where you've got the figure skater standing at center ice and beginning to spin up and the more it spins up, the clearer that eye becomes. So the eye wall is definitely appearing to be strengthening now. Try to take your eyes off the eye for just a second, and I want you to notice all the deep reds. Notice that on the outside of the eye right there, and also on the bottom of the eye. This is all wrapping around. This is being acted upon purely by warm sea surface temperatures, because there is some dry air that's trying to counteract that from the north. I mean, we have a lot of dry air coming down from the northwest, but it just doesn't seem to be enough to choke this system yet. So instead of it weakening or even maintaining itself, it's actually showing signs of strengthening, and that is significant for several reasons. Of course, it would not only increase the wind and the rain, but it's also going to be increasing the storm surge. We've been telling you all along, the worst case scenario would be if Hurricane Wilma came ashore and the system would either slow down or it would strengthen. It hasn't really slowed down, but it has certainly strengthened, and that will increase the storm surge potential for the southwest Florida coast, also for the Keys. We want to just make sure we emphasize that strongly enough that nobody should be along anywhere near a body of water in the Keys or the southwest coast right now. There is a weak side and a strong side to a hurricane that comes in off the Gulf. The weak side is to the north. It looks as though just about all of South Florida will be on the strong side, unless it should take a somewhat different track overnight. But right now, it has such great momentum off to the northeast that it's very, very unlikely that the weak side will be that far south. The weak side will probably stay farther north, and the strong side will also, again, be on the south side, but not the way it's diagrammed there. It would be the way we just diagrammed it before, with a track farther up to the north. So not a good situation for South Florida. We also have a flood watch in effect. Notice the core of very intense dense moisture there in the upper atmosphere. That translates to very heavy rain at the surface, and we're certainly looking at between 4 and 8 inches of rain by the time this is done around mid or late afternoon tomorrow. Watch the core of hurricane force winds. That's what's in the orange. The yellow is the tropical storm force winds. Of course, inside the orange area will be well over 100 miles an hour as it approaches and moves across the area. 7:30 tomorrow morning, we're expecting just about all of South Florida to be experiencing hurricane force winds. And you can see even early in the morning, still experiencing tropical storm force winds out over the Gulf of Mexico, and not really clearing out completely until tomorrow evening. And then it will be followed by a cold front that will dry us off and cool us off. So we're going to be watching that storm track, which continues to take off right across South Florida. Michael, a hurricane warning continues in effect for South Florida, western Cuba, and the northwestern Bahamas at this hour.
John, it is worth noting that you all said early on this could strengthen back up to a borderline or a Category 3. So in and of itself, that's not necessarily surprising, and not to minimize it being a 3. But if your preparations have been taken and you've done all the prudent things, a borderline 2 to 3, as some note of comfort, generally, people should feel secure that their preparations will take them through this, be it a 2 or perhaps even the 3.
Right. There will be more damage with a 3 than there will be with a 2. And the way this works is not that a 3 is maybe 2 times more than a 2, or it's not like a 1 or 2 or a 3, where a 3 is 3 times worse than a 1. Or a 3 would be, half times again greater than a 2. It goes exponentially. In other words, the difference between a 1 and a 2 is not double. It's about 10 times the damage. So you can imagine how much more considerable the damage could be between a 1 and a 3, or a 2 and a 3. It goes up exponentially that way. So the damage would be more considerable for a Category 3 than a Category 2. But you're right. If anybody's taken their preparations right now, they'll be okay. But I think when they go outside tomorrow, they'll find a few more trees down than you would have if it was a 2.
All right. John Gerard, thank you very much for the perspective. Again, the best advice, hopefully all those preparations complete. It is going to be a very long night, no matter how you slice it, given the intensity of this storm. As we take a look around the state of Florida at some of the early impact of Hurricane Wilma, I understand Fort Myers Beach, we have video there as the surf begins to kick up, the winds beginning to advance. In Key West, the southernmost point of the continental U.S. I believe we're looking at a seawall in Key West right now. As a matter of fact, we are, and I think then we'll have some footage. I think that's near the airport right there on the Atlantic side, and then we have some footage from the southernmost point where they are really beginning to be wind-whipped and storm-tossed in the Florida Keys at this hour, and that situation's rapidly going downhill. In Cancun, which was absolutely pummeled by Wilma as a powerful major Category 4 storm. You see some of the impact on the resort island of Cancun, which perhaps many of you have visited. They're talking about hotels, restaurants, and bars, which form the backbone of the tourism industry, taking months and months to repair. And you're only seeing the impact in the tourism area. I remember years ago during